A massive crystal dome stretched high above the assembled delegates, its walls shimmering with colors that had no names in any human language. Inside this vast chamber, representatives from 47 different worlds gathered for what would become the most important meeting in galactic history. Some walked on two legs like humans might, others floated in the air, and a few existed as pure energy contained within glowing spheres. They had come together because of one species that none of them had ever met face to face, but all of them feared. Ambassador Zikthara stood at the center of the chamber, her tall, elegant form draped in the ceremonial robes of the Valerian Empire. Her people had been spacefaring for over 3,000 years, longer than most civilizations in the galaxy. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries of wisdom and experience. Today, however, that wisdom was tinged with something rarely heard in these halls: genuine concern. "Honored colleagues," she began, her words instantly translated into dozens of languages by the chamber's advanced systems. "We face a situation unlike any in our recorded history. The species we call humans have achieved faster-than-light travel in what can only be described as an impossibly short time. Our scouts report that they went from primitive chemical rockets to interstellar capability in less than 60 of their years." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. In the back of the chamber, Elder Nimsato of the Cerebral Collective pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep thought. His species lived for thousands of years and had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. Even to him, humanity's rapid advancement was unprecedented. "How rapid exactly?" asked Counselor Vrintek of the Silicon Brotherhood, his mechanical voice echoing off the crystal walls. Zikthara gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth's solar system, with small dots representing human spacecraft moving between planets. 53 years ago, they achieved their first manned landing on their moon. 37 years ago, they established permanent bases on their fourth planet. 22 years ago, they launched their first interstellar probe. 8 years ago, they achieved faster-than-light travel. 3 years ago, they established their first colony outside their home system. The display zoomed out to show nearby star systems, each marked with human settlements or exploration vessels. The spread was impressive, and to many in the chamber, deeply troubling. Admiral Krielon of the Hegemony Defense Force clicked his mandibles together in what his species considered a gesture of extreme agitation. His people had evolved from insect-like creatures on a harsh world where only the strong survived. They understood warfare better than most species in the galaxy, and what they saw in human expansion patterns worried them greatly. "Their ship designs are crude," Krielon said, his voice carrying the harsh tones of his species, "but they are effective. More concerning is their apparent lack of fear. Most species proceed cautiously when they first enter interstellar space. Humans seem to charge forward without regard for what they might encounter." Delegate Korhan of the Peaceful Worlds Federation raised one of her 4 arms in a gesture requesting permission to speak. Her species had achieved spaceflight through cooperation and gradual development over millennia. Perhaps they simply do not understand the dangers. We could send peaceful contact missions to guide them, as we have done with other emerging species. A low rumble came from the section where the representatives of the Titan clan sat. These massive, stone-like beings rarely spoke in council sessions, but when they did, others listened. "We have observed them," the rumble resolved into words. "They are not peaceful. Their history is written in war. They fight each other constantly, even as they reach for the stars." This statement caused considerable discussion among the delegates. Most spacefaring civilizations had moved beyond internal conflict before achieving interstellar travel. The idea of a species that continued to fight among themselves while also expanding into space was almost incomprehensible. To many present, Zekthara nodded grimly. The Titans speak truth. Our long-range observation posts have monitored human communications for decades. They have fought 2 major global conflicts involving hundreds of millions of casualties. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. Yet somehow, instead of destroying themselves, they have channeled this aggressive nature into rapid technological advancement. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Melanari of the Scientific Concordat, whose species prized knowledge above all else, spoke in a voice filled with reluctant admiration. Their learning rate is extraordinary. They reverse engineer technology faster than any species we have encountered. They adapt, they improve, and they never seem satisfied with their current capabilities. Which brings us to the matter at hand. Zekthara continued. Human expansion shows no signs of slowing. Their fleet grows larger each year. Their colonies spread further into space. Soon they will encounter other spacefaring civilizations. When that happens, we must be prepared for the consequences. Elder Nim Sato's massive brain case pulsed with patterns indicating deep contemplation. When he finally spoke, his telepathic voice reached every mind in the chamber. I have lived through the rise and fall of 17 different galactic powers. I have seen peaceful species become conquerors and warrior races become gardeners. But I have never seen anything like humanity. They possess a combination of aggression, intelligence, and adaptability that could reshape the entire galaxy. Admiral Creolon's mandibles clicked again. Then we should act now, while they are still relatively weak. A preemptive strike could eliminate the threat before it becomes unmanageable. The suggestion caused an immediate uproar. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of different languages and communication methods. Some supported military action, others called for peaceful contact, and still others suggested complete isolation. Zekthara raised her hand for silence, and gradually the chamber quieted. Military action against an emerging species violates the most fundamental principles of this council. We have always believed that every species deserves the chance to find its own path among the stars. But what if that path leads to our destruction? Demanded General Takwin of the warrior Casdot. It was Elder Nim Sato who provided the answer that would change galactic history. We establish a protocol, a single simple rule that all council members must follow regarding this human species. We do not interfere with their fleet operations. We do not make contact. We do not attack. We observe, we prepare, but we do not act until they petition for council membership or directly threaten council worlds. The logic was sound. Humanity was expanding rapidly, but had not yet encountered any major spacefaring civilizations. By avoiding contact, the council could prevent the acceleration of human development that often occurred when primitive species encountered advanced technology. It would also avoid provoking a violent response from what appeared to be a highly aggressive species. Ambassador Zekthara looked around the chamber. All those in favor of establishing the Terran Protocol as described by Elder Nimsato. One by one, representatives from every species raised their hands, tentacles, energy fields, or other appendages in agreement. Even Admiral Creolon, despite his misgivings, voted in favor. The protocol was simple and seemed reasonable. Do not interfere with Earth's fleet dot. As the session ended, and delegates began filing out of the chamber, many felt a sense of relief. They had found a sensible solution to a potentially dangerous problem. They would give humanity space to develop naturally while preparing for eventual contact under controlled circumstances. Admiral Creolon, however, remained troubled as he walked through the crystal corridors toward his transport. He had studied human military history extensively, and everything he had learned suggested that giving warriors time to prepare was rarely a wise strategy. Humans did not just fight. They excelled at it. They studied warfare like his own people, studied science. They treated conflict as both art and science. But the protocol had been established, and he was bound by council law to follow it. As his ship departed the council station, Creolon found himself wondering if they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. Only time would tell if the Terran protocol would preserve peace or simply delay an inevitable conflict. With a species that seemed born for war, the one rule was simple: do not interfere with Earth's fleet. Every member of the Galactic Council understood it, agreed to it, and swore to uphold it. What none of them understood was how difficult that simple rule would prove to follow. 3 years had passed since the Galactic Council established the Terran Protocol, and Admiral Creolon found himself staring at a tactical display that made his mandibles click with frustration. The human fleet had grown from a handful of experimental vessels to a formidable force of over 200 ships. More troubling still, they were no longer content to explore their immediate stellar neighborhood. Human scouts had been detected as far as 20 light-years from Earth, mapping systems and establishing forward bases with military precision. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator's Edge, Creolon watched as his sensors tracked a small human fleet conducting what appeared to be routine patrol operations near the Kepler 442 system. The system sat uncomfortably close to hegemony space, and several of his species' client worlds had begun asking pointed questions about when the mighty hegemony would assert its traditional dominance over the region. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer Vex Mara, her antennae twitching with nervous energy, "the human formation consists of 6 vessels. Our intelligence classifies 3 as destroyers, 2 as cruisers, and 1 larger vessel we believe to be their equivalent of a battleship." Creolon studied the readout with the practiced eye of a career military officer. The human ships moved in tight formation, their courses precise and purposeful. There was nothing casual about their exploration patterns. These were not scientific vessels wandering through space out of curiosity. These were warships, conducting reconnaissance with military discipline. The human fleet was under the command of Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force ship Resolute. Morrison had earned his reputation during the brutal Mars Colonial Wars, where human factions had fought each other for control of the Red Planet's mining operations. The conflict had lasted 3 years and had seen the development of space-based combat tactics that the galaxy had never witnessed before. Morrison had distinguished himself as one of the most innovative tactical minds of his generation. Morrison stood on his bridge, reviewing long-range sensor data with his second-in-command, Commander Lisa Park. Park had served with Morrison for 5 years and had learned to read his moods better than anyone in the fleet. Right now, she could tell that something was bothering him. "Captain," Park said, studying her instruments, "we're detecting some unusual energy signatures at the edge of the system. Could be natural phenomena, but the patterns seem too regular." Morrison moved to her station and examined the data himself. His years of experience in space combat had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts were telling him that they were being watched. "Keep monitoring those signatures. If they move or change pattern, I want to know immediately." What Morrison could not know was that Admiral Creolon had been observing human fleet movements for months, growing increasingly frustrated with the Council's hands-off policy. The hegemony had maintained order in this sector of space for over 800 years. They had built their reputation on swift, decisive action against any potential threats. Watching humans expand unchallenged felt like weakness to Creolon, and weakness was something his warrior culture could not tolerate. "Sir, Communications Officer Trillanes spoke from her station. We are receiving reports from the Zephyrian colonies. They claimed human survey teams had been detected in 3 different systems that the Zephyrians consider part of their traditional territory." The Zephyrians were a client species of the hegemony, small humanoid beings who had achieved spaceflight but lacked the military strength to defend their own worlds. For centuries, they had relied on hegemony protection in exchange for mining rights and tribute. Now they were asking why that. Protection did not extend to keeping human explorers away from their systems. Krelon felt the weight of 800 years of hegemony, tradition pressing down on him. His ancestors had built their empire by projecting strength and never allowing challenges to go unanswered. The Council's protocol demanded that he avoid contact with human forces, but the humans were clearly moving into areas that affected hegemony interests. "Prepare the battle group for movement," Krelon ordered. "We will conduct a simple show of force operation. Nothing aggressive, just a reminder to the humans that this sector has established powers who must be respected." Vexmara's antennae drooped with concern. "Admiral, the Terran Protocol specifically prohibits direct contact with human fleet operations." Krelon's mandibles clicked sharply. "The protocol prohibits interference." "We are not interfering. We are simply exercising our traditional patrol rights in hegemony space. If the humans happen to encounter us during their exploration, that is merely an unfortunate coincidence." The logic was thin, and everyone on the bridge knew it, but orders were orders. The hegemony battle group consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 2 massive dreadnoughts, representing enough firepower to level a small planet, against 6 human ships. It should have been an overwhelming display of superior force. As the hegemony fleet moved into the Kepler 442 system, it positioned themselves directly between the human fleet and the main hyperspace exit point. It was a classic intimidation tactic that had worked successfully against dozens of species over the centuries. The message was clear: you may enter our space, but you leave only when we allow it. Commander Park was the first to detect the incoming ships. "Captain, I have 14 vessels approaching from the outer system. They are moving to intercept our course, and they are big." Morrison studied the tactical display as the alien ships resolved into clear contacts. The vessels were unlike anything in the human database, but their positioning left no doubt about their intentions. They were being cut off, surrounded, and intimidated. "Are they powering weapons?" Morrison asked, his voice calm despite the tension on the bridge. "Negative, sir. Their energy signatures suggest defensive systems only." "But Captain, those ships are huge. The 2 largest vessels are easily twice the size of Resolute." Morrison had faced similar situations during his career, though never against alien opponents. The tactic was universal: show overwhelming force and hope the smaller force backs down without a fight. It was a reasonable strategy that had probably worked countless times throughout galactic history. Unfortunately for Admiral Krelon, Jake Morrison had built his entire career on doing the unreasonable thing. "Signal all ships," Morrison ordered. "Close formation on Resolute. We are going to show these aliens what Earth's fleet is made of." Park stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, they outnumber us more than 2 to 1, and their ships are significantly larger than ours." Morrison smiled grimly. "Commander, I have been outnumbered in every major engagement of my career. The Mars rebels had more ships than us. The corporate security forces had better equipment than us. The pirates at Ganymede had both. But we won every time because we understood something our enemies did not." "What's that, sir?" "Superior numbers mean nothing if you are not willing to use them. These aliens are trying to intimidate us. That means they do not actually want to fight. They want us to run away so they can feel powerful without risking their ships. But if we call their bluff and charge straight at them, they will have to choose between backing down or committing to a battle they never really wanted." It was a dangerous gamble, but Morrison had made similar calculations dozens of times before. The key was to act decisively before the enemy had time to think through their options. Hesitation gave opponents time to convince themselves to fight. Aggressive action often made them realize they preferred to avoid violence altogether. All ships, weapons to full readiness, Morrison commanded. Form attack formation and prepare to engage on my signal. Aboard the Dominator's Edge, Admiral. Creolon watched in growing disbelief as the 6 human ships formed into a tight spearhead formation and began accelerating directly toward his much larger fleet. It was tactically insane. No rational commander would order such an attack against superior numbers. "What are they doing?" Creolon demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, they appear to be forming an attack formation. Their course will bring them into direct contact with our battle line in approximately 8 minutes. Creolon felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. This was not how intimidation was supposed to work. The humans were supposed to recognize their inferior position and withdraw with dignity intact. Instead, they were charging towards certain destruction with apparent eagerness. "Signal them," Creolon ordered. "Tell them to alter course immediately or face the consequences." The message was transmitted on all standard frequencies, but the human ships continued their approach without any change in speed or direction. If anything, their formation became even tighter and more focused. Morrison received the alien transmission, but ignored it completely. He had learned long ago that responding to enemy communications during a tense standoff only gave them more time to prepare for battle. Better to maintain momentum and force them to react to his actions rather than the other way around. 2 minutes to weapons range, Park reported. "Captain, they are starting to power up their defensive systems." "Good," Morrison replied. "That means they are getting nervous." Nervous opponents make mistakes. Admiral Creolon faced the most difficult decision of his long military career. The first shot fired in what would become known as the Battle of Kepler 442 came from the magnetic acceleration cannons of the EDF Resolute. Captain Morrison had timed his attack perfectly, opening fire at the maximum effective range of his weapons, while the alien ships were still adjusting their defensive posture. The tungsten slugs, accelerated to incredible velocities by magnetic fields, crossed the distance between fleets in seconds. Admiral Creolon watched in shock as his flagship's shields flared and failed under the impact of primitive kinetic weapons. The hegemony had grown accustomed to fighting opponents who used energy-based weapons, and their shield systems were calibrated to deflect plasma bolts and particle beams. The simple but devastatingly effective human railguns punched through the energy barriers like they were not even there. "Shields down to 60%, Vexmara reported as alarm klaxons blared throughout the ship. "Hull breaches on deck 7 through 12. The surprise attack had caught the hegemony fleet completely off guard, but Creolon was too experienced a commander to let shock paralyze him. "All ships return fire. Target the lead human vessel and destroy it." But the humans were not finished with their opening gambit. Commander Park had been studying the alien ship formations while her captain prepared his attack, and she had noticed something important. The larger alien vessels were positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire, but they had left gaps in their formation that smaller, faster ships could exploit. "Captain," Park said, "recommend we execute the broken arrow." "Maneuver. Their formation has weak points we can exploit." Morrison nodded approvingly. The broken arrow was a tactic they had developed during the Mars colonial wars, designed to break up superior enemy formations through coordinated attacks from multiple directions. "Signal Vanguard and Spearhead. Execute broken arrow on my mark." "Lieutenant." Commander Ryan Bell, captain of the destroyer Vanguard, had served under Morrison for 3 years and knew his commander's tactics better than anyone in the fleet. When the signal came through, he was already moving his ship into position for a flanking attack on the alien formation. "All hands prepare for combat maneuvers," Bell announced over his ship's communication system. "We are going to show these aliens why you never corner Earth's fleet." The Vanguard and her sister ship Spearhead broke formation and accelerated. toward the flanks of the hegemony battle line, while Resolute continued her direct assault on the center. It was a classic pincer movement, but executed with a speed and precision that the aliens had never encountered before. Admiral Creelon found himself fighting a battle unlike any in his long military career. Human ships moved with an aggressiveness that bordered on reckless, but their movements were perfectly coordinated. Where hegemony doctrine called for careful positioning and methodical attacks, the humans seemed to thrive on chaos and rapid maneuvers. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "the human destroyers are moving too fast for our targeting systems to lock on effectively. Their acceleration rates are far higher than our projections indicated." This was another unpleasant surprise for the hegemony. Human ships had been designed for high-acceleration combat maneuvers, sacrificing some armor and creature comforts for superior mobility. The aliens had built their vessels for long-range patrols and impressive displays of power, not for the kind of close-quarters knife fight that the humans preferred. Commander, Park had launched a spread of fusion torpedoes while the aliens were still reeling from the initial kinetic barrage. The nuclear warheads detonated against two hegemony cruisers, their atomic fury overwhelming the hastily raised shields and sending debris spinning through space. "Direct hits on targets 7 and 9, reported the Resolute's tactical officer. "Both vessels show significant damage and are falling out of formation." But the aliens were beginning to adapt to human tactics. The remaining hegemony ships began concentrating their fire on single targets, hoping to overwhelm human defenses through focused attacks. Plasma bolts and particle beams lanced through space, striking the human ships with energies that could melt through steel. The destroyer Spearhead took the brunt of the alien counterattack, her armor plating glowing white-hot under the sustained bombardment. Captain Angela Stone, commanding the ship, kept her vessel in the fight, even as her hull began to buckle under the punishment. Engineering reports hull integrity at 40% and falling, her executive officer reported. "Recommend immediate withdrawal." Stone looked at her tactical display and saw that her ship's attack run had successfully disabled one of the large alien dreadnoughts. "Negative? We hold position until the mission is complete. Earth's fleet does not run from a fight." This attitude was typical of human commanders and completely alien to most galactic civilizations. Species that had developed spaceflight through peaceful cooperation tended to view warfare as a last resort, something to be avoided whenever possible. Humans, who had fought each other for millennia before reaching the stars, treated combat as a natural extension of diplomacy. Lieutenant Commander Bell's vanguard had circled around to attack the hegemony formation from behind, her weapons targeting the aliens' engine systems. Human tactical doctrine emphasized mobility kills over outright destruction, preferring to disable enemy ships rather than waste ammunition on complete annihilation. "Target their propulsion systems," Bell ordered his weapons officer. "A ship that cannot maneuver is a ship that cannot fight." The Vanguard's magnetic cannons sent tungsten slugs into the rear sections of 3 hegemony cruisers, severing power conduits and disabling their main drives. The alien ships found themselves dead in space, unable to maneuver or retreat, effectively removed from the battle without being completely destroyed. Admiral Creelon watched his carefully planned show of force dissolve into chaos as human ships darted between his formations like predators among prey. His larger, more powerful vessels could not bring their superior firepower to bear against enemies that refused to fight in traditional formations. "Admiral," Vexmara said urgently, "we have lost 4 cruisers and 1 dreadnought is reporting critical damage. The humans have only suffered moderate damage to 1 destroyer, but all their ships remain operational." The tactical situation was rapidly becoming untenable. What should have been a simple intimidation display had turned into a running battle against opponents who seemed to excel exactly this type of combat. Worse still, human reinforcements could arrive at any time. While the nearest hegemony fleet was days away, Captain Morrison evaluated the tactical situation from his command chair and made a decision that would echo throughout galactic history. Instead of pressing his attack to completely destroy the alien fleet, he chose to demonstrate human restraint and tactical sophistication. All ships, cease fire, Morrison ordered. Form defensive formation and open a communication channel on all frequencies. The sudden end to the fighting caught the hegemony by surprise. Admiral Creelon had expected the humans to continue their attack until his fleet was completely destroyed, but instead they had pulled back and were apparently offering to talk. Signal from the lead human vessel, Trillin has reported. They are broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Morrison's voice carried across space, transmitted in clear, unambiguous terms. To the alien vessels in this system, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. Earth's fleet does not start fights, but we sure as hell finish them. You came here to intimidate us, and instead you have learned what happens when you threaten human ships. We could destroy your remaining vessels, but we choose not to. Consider this a lesson in what Earth's fleet is capable of when provoked. The message continued, and Morrison's tone remained calm but firm. Any future attempts to interfere with human fleet operations will be met with appropriate force. We seek no quarrel with your people, but we will not tolerate threats or intimidation. Earth's fleet goes where it chooses, when it chooses, and we will defend our right to explore space against any opposition. Admiral Creolon listened to the human transmission with a mixture of anger and grudging respect. The humans had not only defeated his superior force, they had done so while demonstrating tactical restraint that many hegemony commanders would have lacked. They had proven their point without needless slaughter. Admiral, Vexmara said quietly, recommend immediate withdrawal. We cannot continue this engagement. Creolon's mandibles clicked in frustration, but he knew his tactical officer was correct. His fleet had been outfought and outmaneuvered by a handful of human ships. Continuing the battle would only result in more casualties for no strategic gain. Signal all ships, Creolon ordered reluctantly. We are withdrawing to safe distance. Maintain defensive formation and prepare for possible pursuit. But the humans made no attempt to pursue the retreating hegemony fleet. They had made their point and demonstrated their capabilities. More importantly, they had shown that Earth's fleet could not be intimidated by superior numbers or more advanced technology. As the alien ships limped away from the battlefield, Captain Morrison opened another communication channel, this time directed at long-range monitoring stations that human intelligence knew were scattered throughout the region. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 36 hours after the first reports of the hegemony defeat reached the Central Worlds. Ambassador Zikthara stood once again at the center of the great crystal chamber, but this time the atmosphere was charged with tension and barely controlled panic. Representatives who had spoken confidently about containing the human threat just 3 years earlier now faced the reality that their carefully planned protocol had already failed catastrophically. Elder Nim Sado's massive form pulsed with agitated patterns of light as his telepathic voice filled every mind in the chamber. We established one simple rule regarding humanity, and it has been violated within 3 years of its creation. Now we face the exact scenario we sought to prevent: active military conflict between humans and an established galactic power. Admiral Creolon stood in the defendant's section, his exoskeleton bearing visible scars from the battle damage his flagship had sustained. Despite his defeat, he maintained the rigid posture of a career military officer facing a court-martial. When called upon to explain his actions, his voice carried no hint of apology or regret. The humans were expanding directly toward hegemony client worlds, Creolon stated flatly. The Zephyrian colonies requested protection under our mutual defense agreements. I conducted a standard show of force operation to establish boundaries and demonstrate hegemony sovereignty over the region. Senior Arbiter Kelinara of the Mediator caste rose from her crystalline seat, her translucent form shimmering with barely contained anger. A show of force that resulted in 4 destroyed cruisers and 1 crippled dreadnought. Admiral, your standard operation has potentially triggered the very conflict this council sought to prevent. The political ramifications were staggering. For 800 years, the hegemony had served as the council's primary military enforcement, maintaining order through displays of overwhelming force. Their defeat by a handful of human ships had sent shockwaves throughout every civilized world in the sector. Representative Dolphin of the Merchant Consortium spoke from his floating platform, his voice tinged with commercial concern. Our trade routes pass through 17 systems that humans have either colonized or claimed for exploration. If they respond to diplomatic contact with the same aggression they showed the hegemony, our entire economic network could collapse. But it was Councillor Murtani of the Pacifist Union who raised a question that terrified everyone present. Has anyone in this chamber actually studied human history in detail? Because I have spent the last 36 hours reviewing their cultural and military development, and what I have discovered should frighten every civilized being in the galaxy. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing images and data from Earth's violent past. Murtani's gentle voice carried a weight of horror as she described what human civilization had produced. In the last century alone, humans have fought 2 global conflicts involving hundreds of millions of casualties. They developed nuclear weapons and came within hours of using them to destroy their entire species. They have never known a single year of complete peace in their recorded history. War is not something they do occasionally. It is something they do constantly. The display showed human weapons development, from simple clubs and spears to fusion bombs and railguns. The progression was both rapid and relentless, with each generation of weapons becoming more deadly than the last. More concerning, Murtani continued, is how they treat warfare. Most species view conflict as a necessary evil to be avoided whenever possible. Humans study war like we study science. They have military academies, strategic institutes, and war colleges. They teach their children about famous battles and great generals. They write poetry about combat and sing songs about fallen warriors. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed this information. The concept of a species that glorified warfare was almost incomprehensible to most galactic civilizations. Even the hegemony, despite their military tradition, viewed conflict as a tool of statcraft rather than a cultural ideal. Dr. Melaneri of the Scientific Concordat added her own disturbing observations. Their technological advancement rate increases during periods of conflict. They do not develop better weapons in spite of warfare. They develop them because of warfare. Combat drives their innovation in ways we have never encountered before. Intelligence reports began flooding in from monitoring stations throughout the sector. Long-range sensors detected massive construction projects around Earth's home system. New shipyards were being built at an unprecedented rate, and the designs emerging from them were larger and more heavily armed than anything humans had previously constructed. They are not intimidated by their encounter with advanced alien technology, reported Telser, the Council's chief intelligence analyst. If anything, they appear energized by it. Ship construction has increased by 300% since the hegemony incident. They are not just replacing losses. They are expanding their entire fleet. Admiral Creolon's mandibles clicked with bitter recognition. I warned this council 3 years ago the humans were different. Now my own defeat has proven it. They did not celebrate their victory with parades or speeches. They used it as a learning experience to build better ships and train more crews. The debate that followed would continue for hours, but the fundamental question remained the same. How should the galaxy respond to a species that seemed to excel at the one thing most civilizations tried to avoid? Some delegates called for immediate diplomatic contact, hoping to establish peaceful relations before the situation deteriorated further. Others demanded military action to contain the threat while it was still manageable. Ambassador Zekthara found herself defending not just the original Terran protocol, but the entire philosophy behind it. We cannot abandon our principles because one species develops differently than we expected. The Council was founded on the belief that every civilization deserves the chance to find its own path among the stars. General Takwin of the Warrior Cass disagreed vehemently. Some paths lead to the destruction of others. If we allow humans to continue their expansion unchecked, they may eventually threaten every world in Council space. The arguments continued as more intelligence reports arrived. Human colonies were expanding at an alarming rate, with new settlements being established in systems previously considered too dangerous or remote for colonization. Human ships were detected in areas of space that other species avoided due to hazards or hostile conditions. They seemed to seek out challenges rather than avoid them, observed Dr. Melinari. Most species choose the safest, most efficient paths for expansion. Humans deliberately colonize worlds that require extensive terraforming or dangerous asteroid mining operations. They treat adversity as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. Elder Ninsado's ancient mind processed centuries of experience with emerging civilizations. I have seen aggressive species before. His telepathic voice carried undertones of deep concern. But they were typically aggressive toward specific targets for specific reasons. Humans appear to be aggressive toward existence itself. They fight their environment. They fight each other. They fight any problem that presents itself. It is not just their nature. It is their defining characteristic. The session reached its climax when Captain Morrison's message from the battle was played for the entire assembly. His calm, professional tone made his words even more chilling to species that preferred diplomatic solutions to conflicts. Any species that threatens our ships or our people will discover that humans know how to fight, and we are very good at it. Morrison's voice echoed through the chamber. The simplicity of the statement was more disturbing than any elaborate threat could have been. Here was a species that did not boast about their military capabilities or make grandiose claims about their destiny. They simply stated facts. They knew how to fight. They were good at it, and they would use those skills against anyone who threatened them not. As the debate continued into its 8th hour, a new intelligence report arrived that changed everything. Human deep space exploration vessels had made contact with the Carillion Mining Consortium, a small but strategically important trading partner of several Council worlds. The contact had been peaceful, with humans offering to trade rare earth elements in exchange for navigation data. This changes the dynamic completely, Ambassador Zekthara observed. If humans are capable of peaceful contact when it serves their interests, then perhaps we can establish diplomatic relations under controlled circumstances. But Admiral Creolon remained skeptical. They were peaceful with the Carillions because the Carillions offered them something they wanted and posed no threat. The moment they encounter resistance or competition, they will respond with the same aggression they showed my fleet. The Council faced an unprecedented decision. They could attempt to establish formal diplomatic contact with humanity, hoping to guide their development through peaceful engagement. Alternatively, they could mobilize the combined defense fleet and attempt to contain human expansion through overwhelming force before it became unstoppable. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone had expected. 6 months after the emergency council session, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDF Determination, the flagship of Earth's newly formed Third Fleet. The massive dreadnought represented everything humanity had learned from their first encounter with alien technology, incorporating reverse-engineered hegemony, shield generators, and improved weapon systems that made even the largest human ships formidable opponents for any force in the galaxy. The ship around him hummed with the quiet efficiency of a crew that had trained relentlessly for the confrontation everyone knew was coming. Earth's intelligence services had detected massive fleet movements throughout Council space, and long-range sensors indicated that the aliens were finally preparing to deal with the human problem through military force. "Admiral," reported Captain Susan Hayes, his chief of staff, "deep space monitoring stations have detected multiple alien fleets converging on the Kepler 442 system. Current count shows over 200 vessels from at least 15 different species." Morrison studied the tactical displays with the calm professionalism that had made him Earth's most respected fleet commander. The aliens had finally decided that diplomacy would not work with humanity, and they were bringing everything they had to settle the matter permanently. "Fleet composition analysis," Morrison requested. Hayes consulted her instruments. "Intelligence estimates include hegemony dreadnoughts, Valerian battlecruisers, cerebral collective mind ships, and what appear to be vessels from species we have never encountered before. This is not just a council fleet, Admiral. This is everything they can bring to bear." The Battle of Kepler 442 would become the defining moment in galactic history, but it began with a simple message transmitted by Admiral Morrison to the assembled alien armada. To the combined fleets now entering this system, Morrison's voice carried across space with the same calm professionalism he had shown 6 months earlier. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of Earth's Defense Force. You have come here in overwhelming numbers to intimidate or destroy humanity's presence in space. You will fail." The transmission continued, and Morrison's tone remained steady despite facing odds of more than 5 to 1. "Earth's fleet operates under one principle that has never failed us. We do not start fights, but we finish them. You have chosen to bring war to this system, and we will give you war beyond anything your species have ever experienced." Ambassador Zekthara, observing the battle from the Council command ship Eternal Harmony, felt a chill as she listened to the human admiral's words. There was no boasting, no elaborate threats, just a simple statement of fact delivered with absolute conviction. "Signal the human fleet," she ordered. "Offer them one final chance to withdraw peacefully." But Morrison's response was immediate and uncompromising. "The time for peaceful withdrawal has passed. You brought 200 ships to intimidate 36. Now you will learn why that was insufficient." What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense, but a systematic demonstration of why human military doctrine had evolved through millennia of constant warfare. The aliens fought like they were conducting a large-scale military exercise, with careful formations and predictable tactics. The humans fought like they were defending their species' right to exist. Admiral Kate Ross, commanding Earth's Second Fleet, had served with Morrison during the corporate wars and understood his strategic thinking better than anyone. When his signal came through, she was already moving her ships into position for a flanking attack that would split the alien formation. "All ships execute hammer and anvil," Ross ordered. Her 12 ships accelerated toward the alien left flank, while Morrison's force engaged the center, trapping a significant portion of the Council fleet between two converging attack formations. The aliens had superior numbers and more advanced technology, but they had never faced opponents who treated warfare as both art and science. Human tactical doctrine emphasized speed, aggression, and the willingness to accept casualties in order to achieve strategic objectives. Admiral Paul Griffin, leading Earth's first fleet from the right flank, watched his tactical display as alien. Ships began breaking formation under the coordinated human assault. "Target their command vessels," Quiffin ordered his captains. "Cut off their coordination, and they become individual targets instead of a unified force." The strategy worked with devastating effectiveness. Council ships that had operated together for centuries found themselves isolated and unable to coordinate their responses to human attacks that came from multiple directions simultaneously. Admiral Creelon, commanding the hegemony contingent, aboard his rebuilt flagship, watched in growing horror as human ships tore through the Council formation with the same tactical brilliance they had shown months earlier. "All hegemony vessels, concentrate fire on the human flagship. If we can destroy their command ship, we can break their coordination." But Morrison had anticipated this response. The Determination was heavily armored and shielded, designed to absorb punishment while maintaining command and control functions. When the concentrated alien fire struck his ship, Morrison used the engagement to draw enemy vessels into range of his escorts. "Now," Morrison ordered, and 6 human destroyers that had been hiding in the Determination's sensor shadow emerged and launched a devastating torpedo barrage at point-blank range. The results were catastrophic for the alien fleet. Dozens of Council ships found themselves too close to avoid the nuclear warheads, and the concentrated explosions tore through their formations like a chain reaction of destruction. Commander Lisa Park, now captain of the heavy cruiser Vengeance, led her squadron through the chaos with the precision of a surgeon using a scalpel. Human ships darted between alien formations, targeting engines and weapon systems rather than attempting outright destruction. "Disable rather than destroy," Park ordered her weapons officers. "A ship that cannot fight is just as good as a ship that no longer exists, and it sends a better message about our intentions." This tactical restraint was both practical and psychological. By disabling enemy vessels, rather than destroying them completely, the humans demonstrated that they possessed both the capability and the discipline to control the level of violence. In space combat, the battle raged for 14 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Human ships moved with a coordination and aggressiveness that the Council fleet could not match. When alien vessels attempted to withdraw, human forces pursued and forced them back into combat. When they tried to concentrate their forces, human attacks split them apart again. Elder Nim Sato, observing the battle from his species' flagship, sent a telepathic message to the Council command ship. "We must cease this engagement immediately. The humans are not just defeating us. They are demonstrating that we are inferior in every aspect of space warfare." Ambassador Zekthara watched her carefully planned military solution dissolve into chaos as human ships systematically dismantled the largest fleet ever assembled in the sector. "Signal all ships," she ordered reluctantly. "General withdrawal. We cannot continue this engagement." But Admiral Morrison was not finished. As the surviving Council ships began to retreat, he opened a communication channel that would be heard throughout the galaxy. "To all alien civilizations receiving this transmission," Morrison said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute victory, "let it be known that Earth's fleet has defeated the combined military might of your Council. We did not seek this conflict, but we have ended it on our terms." The message continued, and every word was carefully chosen for maximum impact. Any species that desires peaceful relations with humanity is welcome to establish diplomatic contact through appropriate channels. Any species that threatens Earth or our colonies will face the full might of our fleet. And today's battle has demonstrated what that means. The aftermath of the battle reshaped galactic politics overnight. The Council's military power had been broken, and their authority throughout the sector collapsed as client species realized that the mighty alliance could not protect them from human expansion. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Zekthara found herself on Earth, not as a representative of a superior galactic civilization making contact with a primitive species, but as a diplomat from a defeated coalition seeking terms with the new dominant power in the region. Humans, to their credit, proved to be generous in victory. They established the Terran Accords, which guaranteed protection for any species that recognized Earth's sovereignty over human space and agreed to peaceful coexistence. Trade agreements were negotiated, territorial boundaries were established, and a new framework for interstellar relations was created. More importantly, the humans demonstrated that their military prowess came with corresponding diplomatic skill. They did not seek to conquer or subjugate other species, but rather to establish a stable order that allowed for peaceful expansion and mutual prosperity. Elder Nim Sato, in his historical analysis of the period, wrote, "We established one rule. Regarding humanity, do not interfere with Earth's fleet. We understood the wisdom of this rule, agreed to uphold it, and then violated it anyway because we feared what humanity might become. In breaking our own protocol, we did not prevent the rise of human military dominance, we accelerated it.